Adolescence and identity formation. Through the theories of Bowlby and Erickson, the steps to understanding identity formation or construction can be discovered. But identity is a really hard topic to understand. And as a quick differentiating point, identity is different than personality. Identity is made up of what we believe to be true about ourselves, about others, and about the world at our core. So identity stems from our core belief system, while personality is the combination of characteristics or qualities that form an individual's distinctive character. Personality oftentimes influences how we live out our identity. But when it comes to identity and adolescence, this is really too big of a concept and really a bit of a moving target for us to simply slap a definition on and offer how-to steps. Also, there's a huge difference between identity formation amongst non-believers and believers. When it comes to understanding one's identity, let's go back to the definition. Identity is made up of what we believe to be true about ourselves, about others, and the world at our core. So think about the various perspectives of early childhood development from the theorists. Freud surmised that satisfaction really only came when we got what we wanted, or if our basic needs were not being met in the early years and we never really truly experienced satisfaction, then we would likely struggle to move through the stages of development, which could, of course, then create bigger issues later on in life. Erickson determined that our social interactions and cultural influences were essentially what determined our next steps in identity formation. So, depending on the social interactions that we had or the cultural influences that we had, these would strongly act as a premise for discovering and understanding who we were, which, depending on how we were raised, could potentially create a strong foundation of mistrust and neglect, which of course would also create bigger issues down the line as we continue to grow. Bowlby's attachment theory summarized that when we had a less than ideal attachment to our parents or caregivers, that this will manifest later in life by way of how we handle other relationships, also with a strong undertone that there could be relationship trouble because of our attachment issues. And then another theorist, his name was Jean Paget. He was a psychologist that also focused on child development, but his focus was more on the cognitive development of children. He really wanted to know how children acquired their knowledge and what intellect actually looked like in these kids. Paget's theory included 4 stages of cognitive development. However, his stage on adolescence to adulthood is really what focused on identity formation. Paget's formal operations, which was his stage 4, marked a movement that teenagers have the ability to think and reason logically regarding concrete events and abstract concepts. Really, understanding that during this stage of adolescence, these individuals are starting to create their own perspectives about the world. What is right? What is wrong? What is true? What is false? The way that we parent strongly influences our children's attitudes, behaviors, choices, and understanding of who they are. Here's how it all comes together. We know that all of these theories are valid to a certain extent. There really is no denying that. But here's the kicker. All of these concepts and these theories all start to show in the adolescent stage of development. So when a 15-year-old is starting to explore life, they experience what's called an attachment dilemma. They are learning that there are other things outside of what they've always been taught. They're learning that there are other options, there are other belief systems. They are learning that they can challenge what they have always known to be true so that they can really understand and decide if they are going to believe what they have always been taught as truth or if they're going to create their own new definition of truth. Part of this depends on how they were raised and really what their parents or caregivers might have taught them. But their exploration starts based on their lived experiences or what they know to be true about themselves because of how they were treated from the influential people in their lives, because of what was modeled in them in terms of acceptance or worthiness, or what was demonstrated to them in terms of how things were done. So, if you're anything like me, I would be the first to admit that I have never been, nor will I likely ever be, the perfect parent. So, thinking about all of these things and all these concepts can get a little disconcerting. However, this is where there's light at the end of the tunnel. From a biblical perspective, we are taught to put our identity in Christ because we are imperfect, immoral human beings. We screw up every day, we make wrong decisions every day, and we really truly could never ever be perfect. But when we place our identity in Christ, we take on the character and characteristics of Christ. We learn that we are worthy, we are chosen, we are loved, we are redeemed, we are part of the royal family of God. So when the question is asked, who am I can answer that I am chosen. I am the beloved daughter of Christ. And if I really don't know what that means, I can start looking to biblical principle to learn more about what I believe, or what I believe to be true about myself, or what I understand to be moral and just, instead of looking to the world, to our culture, to society for these answers. Adolescence and identity formation is one of those areas that is incredibly hard to fully understand, partly because when kids reach adolescence, they're already dealing with all kinds of other issues that they don't fully understand. Things are happening and they're like, blah, now what? Now I have to, I don't know what's going on with my body, and now I don't know what's going on with my mind. But then intellect and reasoning starts to kick in, and they start to question why things are the way they are, and they really start to create their own assumptions and perspectives. And really, as a parent, it's our job to guide and then really course correct if there's any way we can do that. But the great news about identity is that this is something that continues to develop throughout the course of our lifetime. As a teenagers, these individuals fall subject to formal operational thinking, which is that thinking is absolute. Decisions are based on their limited personal experiences or logic. Uh, Everything is black and white. There is no gray. And let's use the example above. At 15 years old, some formal operational thinking could be classified as naive. These individuals are naive because they haven't lived enough life. But whereas when we continue to experience more things in life, we learn more of a post-formal thinking pattern, and we start to think in terms of complexities and situational constraints and circumstances. We understand logic and reasoning and how emotion plays into certain circumstances and how this creates an additional reaction from us, and so on. This is why I mentioned previously that identity is a bit of a moving target. It really is. We are constantly learning new things through our experiences and situations. All of these things contribute to our sense of who we are. But if parents and caregivers can ingrain in our young children through the early child years that we place our identity in Christ and we live out our identity based on the way that God sees us, it is incredibly freeing to not have to find our worth in external circumstances, but in knowing that we belong to something so much bigger. I hope that this video offers a little bit of clarity and perspective into identity formation and adolescence.